SEGA presents SEGA Talk, a podcast talking all things SEGA! With your hosts, George and Barry.
Look, it's a giant talking egg. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the master here. Say what?
Hello, and welcome to SEGA Talk. I'm Barry, with me is George.
George Kid.
George the Kid.
Yes.
And if you can't tell, on this episode we're venturing back into the world of Alex Kidd. Yes, we are talking about the Sega Genesis Mega Drive game Alex Kidd in the Enchanted Castle. And this is our 47th episode, meaning we are very close to episode 50. And we're not going to reveal what it is, but I will say that it is a pick from one of our Patreon supporters. And if you like this show and you want us to cover a specific game, if you back us at a certain tier, I believe it's the $20 tier,
yeah,
you get to pick what we talk about. And you don't need to keep that tier forever. You keep it for 1 month so it processes. And within that month, you can pick your game and we cover it. If you want to drop it back down, you can. If you want to keep supporting at that level, we appreciate that. We appreciate you. And you can build them up like little credits, so you can be like, I want to cash in, and I'm picking every episode for the rest of your lives.
And there's like a number coming up that is like special to you, and you want to like get your game on that number. You could also like pre-order like number 69, which is a good number to pre-order. And whenever 69 comes around, you'll be your episode dedicated to you, the King of 69.
Seaman would be a goodish episode 69. But on this episode, we're talking about Alex Kidd, and it's a weird choice, in my opinion, just because I don't think either one of us are big Alex Kidd fans.
No.
And the reason we're talking about it is because Alex Kidd is coming back. Like, Sega licensed it out, and a team is working on it. And this team has been working on it for a while. It's called Alex Kidd in Miracle World DX, which is kind of weird because it's not a director's cut, because the director of Alex Kidd is not working on it.
No. Yeah.
So I think that's a little weird. But this episode, we are talking about Alex Kidd in the Enchanted Castle, also called Alex Kidd Heavenly Evil Castle in Japan, and Alex Kidd Martial Sky in Korea.
Martial Sky.
So this Martial Sky, like martial law, I don't know, sky law. The game was released to the Sega Mega Drive in Japan on February 1989, and in the US, the original notes said that it was a Sega Genesis launch title in August. We'll get to that, and I think this is breaking news. Some people know about this, but no one's talking about it. None of the wikis have this information. So basically, it came out late 89 or even early 1990 in America, and the European release was November 1990. So that's right. This was not a launch title, despite every source on the internet saying otherwise. So like I said, stay tuned. We will get to that. This was the 5th game in the Alex Kidd franchise. Enchanted Castle also has the distinction of being the only 16-bit game in the franchise. And like other titles in the series, the game was a side-scrolling platformer. The game was developed by Sega R&D2, which you can hear more about in our Alex Kidd in Miracle World episode. But Mark Cerny of the Sega Technical Institute, and he's with Sony now, right?
Yeah, he's been he did the whole PS5 thing. I mean, 4 and the 5. Yeah,
that's insane. But he described Sega R&D2 as a sweatshop.
It's probably true.
And we did dive into it more on the Miracle World episode, but it's really hard to find development stories from R&D2 games because they really just cranked them out.
Yeah.
They didn't even like elevate their game makers to be like, this is Yu Suzuki, this is Yuji Naka, this is so-and-so for Alex Kidd. They didn't do that.
And I think this is why my memories with Alex Kidd, and I know this is the next question, right? We're going to talk about our memories with the franchise.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, well, why don't you share them? Go ahead.
I think for a while, Sega was doing like all their 8-tier team was like doing arcade games. So you had Outrun, you had Hang On, you had you had all these games coming out on arcade and then we got Yu Suzuki and other names, and I feel like it took a while for the console side to like catch up in talent. And I think in the early 90s, that's when it really started hitting off with like Shinobi. Like the Shinobi sequels were coming to home consoles. Streets of Rage was a console exclusive, and Sonic the Hedgehog, of course. But this one right here, I played it way late. I remember thinking like, I don't even know how I played it. It might have been in one of those like, when you like get like early ROMs when I was testing out the Sega Genesis ROM on my computer. And I think this is one of the early games I played because I accidentally thought it had something to do with, I think, Castle of Illusion, because they both have Castle in it, and this one's Enchanted, the other one's an Illusion. Even though it has nothing to do with it, I just kind of assumed because Alex Kidd does do kind of time travel in different games where he goes to Shinobi World. So I kind of just assumed that because I'm dumb. But early memories, I don't know. I thought it was kind of ganky. It was probably not the worst game I've ever played. That's all I kind of remember. I just remember it being kind of like an average platformer with a lot of problems. And I think there's a lot of other better platformers, like, I don't know, Adventure Island, that I enjoyed back then when I was younger. So to me, it's like I could see why Sega kind of removed themselves from Alex Kidd, even though they had like, 5 entries?
Yeah, 5 or 6. And yeah, so for me with the game, I don't have distinct memory, but I'm almost sure that this is one of those games I rented for a weekend, didn't get too far into, either because it was too difficult for me, or because I just didn't enjoy it. But looking at the cover art, it is weird cover art, and we'll cover that, but it does have like a very Indiana Jones kind of vibe to it, which would have appealed to me at the time. I also really liked Quackshot, and so that game, which also kind of ripped off Indiana Jones, I could see myself seeing Alex Kidd and going, oh, okay, platforming adventure game, kind of looks like Indiana Jones. I'll check this out. But yeah, honestly, like the first stage is really the only thing that I see, and I think, okay, yeah, I've played this. But outside of that, no, I don't have any strong memories of this. It's just that first stage I really do feel like I've played briefly. So speaking of how many Alex Kidd games there are, you might think Alex Kidd in the Enchanted Castle was the final game in the series. However, Alex Kidd in Shinobi World released to the US and Europe in 1990, and to my knowledge, there was no Japanese release of Shinobi World, which meant Enchanted Castle was the final game in the series in Japan. However, the reason we are recording this episode is because, as I mentioned, Alex Kidd in Miracle World DX was announced by Merge Games, Jenkin Team, and Sega for a 2021 release. So, and I should also add, in my research, I did find that they were really aggressively in 1989 pushing Alex Kidd in High Tech World. It was the cover, that's a Master System game, it was the cover of one of the last Sega newsletters. I think the last one actually was Alex Kidd. They were also pushing it in a lot of magazines. So in my research for like late 1989 Alex Kidd games, I honestly don't think they had a reason to release this game, because High Tech was like 3 months before, the release of the Genesis. It was fresh in everyone's minds, and maybe they either felt like they needed to hold off because they already had an Alex Kidd game out, or there was another reason. But regardless, so what are your thoughts on the series as a whole, its differing gameplay styles, and the idea that Shinobi World was the final game until the recently announced DX?
My favorite one that I played, I remember playing through at least a little bit of all of them years ago, and I remember Shinobi World really kind of stuck with me, not because it was like amazing or anything. I just liked the idea that like Alex Kidd could be this like, I don't know, like he could go on adventures, and instead of like, you know how when you play like those Sonic story games or whatever, where he's like a knight or whatever, the Black Knight and the Secret of the Ring. I like the
Right.
idea, and Mickey Mouse did the same thing, right? Where he was a knight or whatever in one game, and then in the other one he was like some other hero. I like the idea that Alex Kidd could do that, but within Sega franchises. So if you want to release a racing game, it's like Alex Kidd in Outrun World. And I kind of like that aspect of it, and I thought they did a nice job of like making the Shinobi world a little kiddie-ish. So I really like that one. So if we ever do an episode on that one, I'll be gleeful about Alex Kidd. As far as DX, I actually think it looks cool. A lot of people have been knocking the art style. I don't like the bloomy effect. It kind of gives it that dreamy look. But outside of that, I actually kind of like the new redesigns. I like the way that Alex Kidd looks. It looks a little silly, little like little monkey boy, more like his origins, really. It was like Dragon Ball, Monkey Boy King, or what do they call it? Monkey King? Is that what it is?
Yeah, and, that's interesting you say that, because for me, I thought that the different kind of gameplay styles and them never really landing on one kind of hurt the series because no one ever latched. Like, imagine if Sonic the Hedgehog came out. Sonic 1 was Sonic 1. Sonic 2 was a completely different gameplay style. Sonic 3 mixed it up again and was like a spoof of Shinobi. I mean, that was Alex Kidd, but at the same time, it showed that he was very versatile. He could be a racing game. He could be a platformer. He could be an arcade kind of... there was the one with the little girl. I forgot which one that was. Was that the Lost Stars, I think? That was an arcade release, and then it came to Master System. As far as the recently announced DX, I think it is a smart move to just like straight up take inspiration from the first game. I think the mere fact that the game has so much history, they really should have announced, and maybe they still will, but I don't think they will, kind of more influence from other games. So you could be like, oh, his BMX bike design from that game is in this, and there is a Shinobi costume, and there is a Lost Stars mode where you collect the stars, and there is, you know what I mean? Like, have nods to all the series within this.
Yeah, like
I think that would have been smart.
Like, kind of like establish a platforming formula, and then within that formula have like every stage is based off of a Sega game that's come out in the last year or something, Kind of a way to
exactly.
like connect the worlds back then. And I think this is really early on in, Sega's history of gaming, 89. I feel like, there's a reason why the Sega Genesis was called the Genesis. It's kind of like a redo for them as a console creator, especially with Sonic. And I think he was just, or Alex Kidd was just shy a couple of years maybe. If they gave this game, I don't know, maybe a year more of development time and like rethought everything out, and like maybe he could have been viable. But I mean, after Sonic, it's kind of hard to go back to Alex Kidd, dude.
For sure, yeah. And I mean, I will say that Enchanted Castle, it was notable for bringing the game back to its roots. For a lot of people, it felt like the first real sequel to the original, and Enchanted Castle was within the launch window, So in that context, it was clear that the target audience were people who owned the Sega Master System original, and they were seeing the Genesis coming out, and they're like, oh, look, it has a recognizable game that I was used to there. Other games on the console that I'm trying to think. So Space Harrier did have Master System ports. Alex Kidd had Master System games. So there was a few titles there, but the other ones were really like Altered Beast released to both platforms at the time. Thunderblade released to both platforms. These aren't all launch titles, but they released within that launch window. So talking about the Genesis, the games released within the launch window clearly pushed the machine as part of Sega's home arcade and part 16-bit Master System. So they were really pushing games that brought the arcade experience home, and they were also pushing games that were like, hey, remember that Master System game? Here's a 16-bit version. So what's your opinion on how Sega, I didn't really know how to phrase this, but how they framed the Genesis at launch? Because I guess I could think of an example. When the Xbox One was announced, they were really pushing it as a multimedia hub more than a game machine.
That's true.
So in this case, when the Genesis was first being launched, They were very clearly pushing it's the arcade experience at home, which was something they did a lot with the Master System.
Yeah.
And they were kind of, dangling Master System franchises in people's faces, saying like, hey, check this one out. But honestly, like, did that characterization really did change over time? That's a question I asked, but I'm answering it now because, as we both know, 1991 saw a big reframing of the Genesis. So what's your opinion on that original kind of idea of what the Genesis was at launch? And you saw in that commercial too. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like the Genesis drops from the ceiling and saves everyone from the 8-bit NES. Remember that one?
Of course, yes.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts?
I think that Sega's always kind of like marketed their consoles as an arcade machine, which is kind of like one of those things that I always wonder why people want. Like, I want a new Sega console, of course, but like one of the things that Sega's always done, even Master System, Genesis, Saturn, and even Dreamcast, was this is the arcade experience at your house. And that's something that like it's not as valued as it used to be back in the day. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was the smart way of doing it. I think that probably sold a lot of people at this time. Because, I mean, 88 or what, 89? I mean, I guess if you're in Japan, the Mega Drive came out in 88, right?
Right.
There was like this renaissance of like arcades, right? So, especially in Japan. So that makes 100% sense. And I'm actually kind of surprised. Did Sega of America really push the Master System? People like try to push the Master System existing fan base to the Genesis. It's like I feel like this would have been more of a I don't know, European / like Brazilian like move.
So I really think that in America they were pushing the home arcade, and they were pushing the celebrities, and I think in Japan, because of the 1988 release and because the Master System the Mark 7, Mark 3?
Three.
It was, fresh in people's minds and they liked it, that in other territories they were pushing it as like, this is your upgrade from the Master System. And I think in America they were like, no, we want nothing to do with that. So with that in mind, you really didn't see that, hey, it's the new Master System. They were really rebooting themselves with the Genesis name. But despite that, because they had to localize these games, because otherwise they don't have a really strong library, it does kind of give that vibe that they are pushing Master System titles at the onset. And it, I guess, in their case, doesn't help, but in Alex Kidd's case, does help that there's so much familiarity here between the original game and this game.
So... Yeah. One of the things we talk a lot, I mean, one of the things I've noticed, as you know, like, this has nothing to do with this, but like, as a collector, you're a collector of Sonic the Hedgehog stuff, right? You've like gone online and you've seen the massive amounts of like crap that like has Sonic the Hedgehog pictures on it, right?
Right.
Like, I always wonder, is there somebody that collects Alex Kidd stuff that has like all these like, look, I have an Alex Kidd jacket and I have this that came out in 1989 for this launch game, and this one in 86 for this party, and this pin. Like, you think there's that much stuff made of Alex the Kidd collectible?
I don't think there is a lot of stuff. Isn't there a figurine? Maybe there is a figurine, but to be honest, I really haven't seen much. That is a good question.
It's just one of those
I
weird
don't think
things,
there's much.
Right? Because, like, he's supposed to be a mascot, but, like, how many other, I guess, pseudo mascots were there back in the 90s, right? Remember when everybody wanted to have their own?
Right. I kind of push back. I don't think he was a mascot. I kind of push back on that. I think he just was a Sega-owned franchise that had a lot of games. And I think when people look at that, they go, oh, he's the mascot. Like Crash Bandicoot, people say he's the mascot. No. But, like, he isn't, right?
No, but I guess people that grew up in that era saw him as a mascot. And commercials for Sony definitely pushed him that way, I guess, in the time. But he's not really even Sony-owned, so that's kind of weird, huh?
Yeah. So I think people just kind of like, they like to name a mascot. Like they think Knights was the Saturn's mascot, or they think Ooh La La. I've seen her named as the Dreamcast mascot. So it's. I think he gets that reputation from people, but I have to wonder if, like, higher up, they were actually even thinking.
Nah.
He was a mascot. To be honest, I've seen, like, the Afterburner jet pushed as the mascot more sometimes. Like, I'll see it in so many ads, and I'm like, oh, what a fun character, the jet.
When you look at one of the old Sega Vision magazines, there's this article or, like, news or, like, a little write-up on the side where it has Sato, or what's his name? I forgot what his name is. The guy that created every single Sega console. And it's like 4 pictures of him chilling with a bunch of like Opa dolls. And I'm like, I mean, to him, I'm assuming he's talking about how much he loves the character. Like some people in Japan, they consider that even a pseudo mascot, I guess, for a while. Where it got like 3 years of popularity and then it burned out and it left.
I mean, I think Opa we use him as the Sega Bits mascot, and I think why he's so fantastic is because he's a character, but he also looks like an icon. You know what I mean? Like he's almost like a logo. Mm-hmm. He has wings, he has a little personality there, but there's no face. He's just a series of shapes, and you look at those sprite shapes of him, and it could have just been a logo that you're looking at, and it's not really. It's like a designed object, and I like the colors of it. I like the little wings. I like the fact that Opa can have feet, or he can have a little blaster in his butt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think he's an endearing character. Far more than Alex. But yeah, going back to the collectibles question, that's interesting. If you're listening to this and you're not only an Alex Kidd fan, but you're a collector and like you actually own Alex Kidd stuff that I've never heard of, I don't know, leave us a comment or email us if you have pictures or something.
Yeah, especially if you like worked at Sega or during this time, because there's people that we follow on like Twitter that like worked at Sega in some capacity, like a phone line or whatever. So yeah, for sure.
So let's get into the story here. And do you have it queued up with the video?
Yeah, I do. So you just want to look at the video?
Yeah, let's just get right into the video. So it's at 20 seconds in. When you're ready to play, I can start talking.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Play. Scrolling text. Hi, I'm Alex Kidd. I live on the planet Ares. My brother, Igul, is king. Frankly, my life was uneventful. But then, I heard a rumor. My lost father, King Thor, was alive on the planet Paper Rock. Why is it named Paper Rock? Because everyone there is an expert at the game called Paper, Rock, Scissors. You get it? If a visitor is no good at that game, he won't last long. My family didn't want me to go, but I have to find out. Is my father still alive? And that's the plot of the game.
How does that make you feel?
How does it make me feel?
Like, first of all, it sounds like if I went back in time and I read my stories in second grade for creative writing, that's exactly what my stories would be like. They kidnapped my father. People here have to know how to play tag.
Right.
It's like, what? Okay.
Going back to talking about other franchises, I think Alex Kidd kind of falls flat just because I don't think it's a memorable story. I don't think the names are very memorable, and maybe people get mad at me, but like I'll encounter people who are like, I grew up in South America. I love Alex Kidd. Oh my gosh, Planet Ares, King Thor, like they talk about these places like it's everyone knows these names.
Like is the Green Hill Zone.
Well, yeah, and I have to wonder if that's what I sound like when I'm like, oh yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog and Green Hill Zone with Dr. Eggman, Robotnik, and then there's Scrap Brain Zone, and then there's Chopper. Like I start naming off the badniks. Like,
Well, when I went to
But
that Sonic party, that's what it felt like when all you guys and the Sonic retro guys were talking about like super obscure like characters, and you guys were just making jokes about it. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I know what you guys are talking about exactly.
but I think the difference is maybe the Alex Kidd stuff is like you can just sit down with a bunch of people in regions where these games really kicked off, but here it's reading this, it's just, this is all kind of foreign to me. Like I completely forgot that King Thor was his dad's name. Ares was the planet.
Are you surprised that it has a tie-in with the Marvel movies?
Yeah, that's surprising too. But I think the story would have, I think the game universe would have been stronger if it was simplified. So if you had Alex Kidd as the prince of Miracle World, and you can keep King Thor, I guess, and Planet Paper Rock, but you don't need like another king who's his brother, and then he goes from Planet Ares to Planet Paper Rock, and like, what's Miracle World? Is that like a different place? I mean, maybe I'm offending Alex Kidd fans right now, but I feel like this game really would have benefited from SEGA of America TLC that they gave in the 90s to Sonic, because SEGA of America were like, no, let's not have a rock band and let's not have a girlfriend. Like, they really simplified it and stripped it down, which is funny because my complaint about this game is actually that I think going to rescue your dad is a very boring plot. It's something we've seen a lot in games, either avenging someone or rescuing someone. Fantasy Zone, I think, is the same story. Remember that? Where you're like, where's your dad? And it's like, your dad's the enemy.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was the Darth Vader moment. I mean, there's a payoff in the end. I mean, is your dad bad in this game? Is there a twist?
Well, we'll get to that. It's kind of a letdown.
Okay.
What do you think about rescue plots in 80s video games?
It's funny. I mean, you have to have something. You have to have a really good journey, and I think you have to have a really good payoff in the end to like make it work. I think if you're just gonna be doing it like bread and butter, like it's funny because one of my favorite animes is Hunter x Hunter, who is the subline, like the little plot they give you in the beginning is that he's finding his dad, but like it goes on to a bunch of other crap. When they do 160 episodes, it goes to a bunch of different plot points. But like, do I like the idea? That was one of the things that kind of withdrew me from that, watching the whole thing, when I was like, just a dad plot. But yeah, I don't know. It's not the worst. It could be a lot worse. I mean, what's Sonic doing? Is he saving his dad? Where's Sonic's dad? Why does Sonic get to run around all day and I can't when I was a kid?
I think what works with Sonic is that the game itself is your goal. They're like, defeat the Badniks, free the zones, defeat Robotnik. And you're doing that throughout the game. In this game, you just go around playing rock, paper, scissors with these random enemies until you get to the final enemy. And then, spoiler alert, your dad, he's not playable. He's not a boss you fight. He's just there. It's almost like chilling. Princess Peach.
Yeah, just chilling.
He's just chilling. And with Mario, like with Princess Peach, that was the first Super Mario game, so I can forgive that because she came back in the next one, or at least the Western sequel, and was playable. And I thought here, like, you're introducing the dad, why not either put him in the game somehow, like you could call upon him for power, or have him as an actual boss, something like that. Like, I just feel like when you're this far into the franchise and it's a 16-bit title, you could have done more with Alex Kidd's family. And I bring up his brother, King Eagle, because like he doesn't really play a part in the game, so why do you even have him? Like, you don't need to say Alex Kidd is not the king, his brother's the king.
It's almost like
it's
how many? Okay, so 86 through 89 they did 6 games. Like, it's kind of crazy to me, and they're all like kind of like different. Like, there's one that you're in a sci-fi one, and this one's a castle, right, like medieval one. It's kind of crazy. And
I think a big part of that is the sweatshop term that they use, because I think they spit out ideas. There was not like with Sonic where they really crafted the story. They bounced back and forth between the US and Japan, really fine-tuned his design, everything. Here it was just kind of like, all right, you're doing another platformer, go. All right, there's a planet areas. You're Alex Kidd. We'll use that Monkey King thing from that we learned about in school. All right, good, go. Rock paper scissors. Good, Jenkins.
Yeah,
you know?
I don't know if you know this, but like every time I go and I play those like Chinese rip-off games, those little like, there's some guy in China made and they released like not officially on the NES way back.
Uh-huh.
It's always like these like Alex Kidd rip-off looking characters, or like Dragon Ball, like with the little tails. So I mean, it's just kind of weird that Sega has a whole franchise kind of that looks like that. I'm not saying it is, but it looks like that character. Like, this is a little monkey boy. That's what it looks like, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the gameplay. So, as mentioned, Enchanted Castle is a lot like the first game in the series, Alex Kidd Miracle World, which is Sega Talk number 30. Jump back and listen to that. Come back. Resume this episode. It controls like your typical platformer, jumping and punching moves. Doorways can be entered by pressing up, like that's common. However, inside you will play a game of rock, paper, scissors to obtain items, which also require your collected money to place bets. So you have to go in, have the money, you aren't able to buy the item, you have to play a game of chance to win the item. There is an item that allows you to see what your opponent's hand is, which is extremely helpful. Kind of removes the whole chance. But I think you have to win that. In the American release, in the English releases, a large weight falls on the loser's head. Well, in the Japanese release, the loser loses their clothes. And I don't know what this means, but Alex privates are covered by a tiny elephant. Oh. Which makes me think if they're saying the little elephant trunk is like the size of his wiener.
I maybe. And it's like... Maybe it's a regular size elephant and Alex Kidd's that big. So. And
can you guess what boss fights are like?
Isn't this one where you just literally fight? Like, this is not rock, paper, scissors fights, is it?
No, it's rock, paper, scissors,
yeah.
Man. So, all right, look, I will say I think this game is enjoyable. I think it's a fun little early Genesis game, but it's very clear that they were cutting corners here when they were like, all right, we developed a rock, paper, scissors system. How should we use it? Have it be every item shop and have it be every boss fight. It's just like...
Yeah.
What?
It's, and there's no, mechanic that's, like, interesting behind it. It's like... You either win or lose, right? Like, oh, I'm buying an item. You either get it or don't get it, right? Like, if you lose, you don't get the item.
You either get the item and your money is well spent, or you lose the game, lose the fight, and you don't get your item and you lost your money that you bet. And with the boss fight, you have to start the level over again. So it's a game of chance in order to proceed, which I think sounds really unfair. To be quite honest, I would have preferred it if each boss just had the exact same fight set. You know what I mean? Like, we've talked about games in the past where we're like, man, each boss is the same, but at least you're fighting someone, you know?
Yeah. There's some chance that you could just, like, memorize the tactics between this character. It's not this thing where you just randomly get to, like, level 4 or level 6, and then it's like, oh, I lost rock, paper, scissors. Oh, okay, cool. I guess do this all over again.
And it really doesn't feel like... So, it annoys... I don't like it when platformers rely heavily on a game mechanic that is completely different from platforming in order to progress. So, in this case, I don't like it when I'm really fine-tuning my skills to get through the levels, jump, attack, all that. And then when it really counts, I need to do a game of chance to win. And as much as I like the Sonic games, I kind of don't like the special stages in that sense, because in some games you need to collect all the emeralds in order to have an additional stage. And sometimes it's like, oh, you're really good at Sonic? Cool. Now here's a game where you're running on a 3-dimensional grid and you need to collect these little bubbles. And I'm like, my skills in the game don't really translate to that, so I have to get good at a different type of game in order to get better. And I think some of the best Sonic special stages are ones that use the in-game sort of system. So, for example, I actually think the half pipe is pretty good compared to Sonic 1's like spinning maze, because at the very least you have a little more control, and the half pipe does feel like a 3D Sonic game.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just me. So
I was gonna say about the rock paper scissors. I feel like some aspects of it can work. Like you said, the item part. It sucks because you pay money and then you either get the item or you don't get the item depending on chance.
Right.
And there's other games that kind of like these new roguelike games. I don't know if you played any of these, but like the Binding of Isaac, it's kind of like random weaponized. So you could have done like, oh, it's 3 weapons you could pick depending on if you win. I guess if you win, you get a different weapon, and if you lose, you get a different weapon, and it's random. It would have been better because you at least get something, but there's some randomness to it, so you don't get what you want. So you're always on your toes experimenting with new items. Like something like that could work, but not giving you an item is dumb. Like, you know.
Right, and I will say I do like how, because I played the game a bit before we recorded, but I also watched a playthrough, and in the playthrough they would do things where they'd like jump with the pogo stick, get really high, and then they'd pause, switch to the pedicopter, and they'd start going up in the sky. And I thought that was really cool that you could switch items on the fly like that. That
is pretty cool, yeah.
That's pretty cool, and it reminds me of the item shop in Fantasy Zone, where... Yeah. But the difference is you can enter the item shop whenever you want because you own those items. And it's not like only entering the item shop allows you to change what you're using. And so with that in mind, I feel like Alex Kidd does kind of lift some ideas from Fantasy Zone and improve upon them. So I feel like Alex Kidd in the Enchanted Castle is like one ROM hack away from being a really great game.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I think, yeah.
Like doing that whole, like I told you, like items, rethinking that and how that works, and then maybe just the bosses actually having some gimmicks where you have to memorize some patterns, I think would have worked.
Like maybe the item shops only gave you tokens to try another game of rock, paper, scissors against the boss. So you could go through the stage and all the items themselves were like out and about, scattered, and collect money and all that. But when you went to the item shops, you were only buying extra chances against the boss. So you could like rack up like 9 of them. And then once you get to the boss, you might have that, that magic, no, what is it? The necklace. We'll get to the items here.
Yeah.
Or you might have, you might have like 6 chances. So you're like, oh, I'm going to make this. And sure, that's like super easy. But like I've already dropped $45 on this game because apparently that was the price for the game when it released.
And that was back then. So that's like in $1989, that's like $1 million today. It's like, obviously.
Yeah, I will say, the game was $44.99 according to 2 reviews that I saw, and there was actually a video of a Toys R Us in 1990, and it was $39.99. So, that's
not that bad of a price
terrible.
Back then. No.
Yeah. Let's go through the items here real quick. So we've got the magic ring, which shoots fireballs. The pogo stick, which allows Alex to jump extra high, and I think that's new to this game. The motorbike, you can run over enemies in Alex's path. The cane, which allows him to levitate. Is that a Japanese thing?
Canes to help you walk, dude. They don't help you. They help you see things in your way.
Well, there was that guy, that Cowboy Bebop one where it was like an umbrella, right? And he would like float.
That makes sense with the wind,
That's true. There's the helicopter, which allows him to fly and shoot missiles, which I think is called the pedicopter because of the pedals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But people are like, oh, he's a little boy, pedifutton.
Yeah.
The cape, which is invincibility, and then the necklace, which allows you to read the opponent's mind during the scissor, paper, rock match. From this list, what's your favorite item and what's your least favorite item?
I actually, maybe, the cane probably, because is the least favorite, but my favorite obviously is the necklace, because you could read the rock, paper, scissors, bro. You don't even have to do it. And why does it say scissors, paper, rock? Come on, it's rock, paper, scissors. Everyone knows it.
That's a little
Is that-
copy paste on my part.
So you don't say it like that in Chicago? What is it? Is it over there? Scissors,
Yeah, we
paper,
call
rock?
it bada bing, bada boom.
Ah, yes.
Yeah,
What's
yeah.
your least favorite item?
My favorite would probably be the helicopter, and my least favorite would probably be invincibility. Just sounds kind of boring and it's fleeting. I kind of like stuff like fireballs, and at the very least you can use the item, kind of like Adventure Island, or you can use it until you get hit.
Mm-hmm.
I think they could have gone a little further, added a few more, but it's I think it's a decent list. I think one of the strengths of the Alex Kidd games are the little vehicles. So it's cool to see them back in this. I think the pogo stick is kind of for being like new to the series and like the big new item in this game, it's kind of weak. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was in other games, but pogo. So the game itself, there's 11 stages compared to Miracle World 17.
Wow,
However,
that's way less, dude.
Yeah. Despite being fewer stages, there is more exploration in the sky and in the underground routes. So real quickly here, let's run through the stages in the game. You ready?
Yeah, I got it. You want to see
So
stage
we
one?
got, stage 1, we got Rookie Town. Not too much to say about this. It's your standard Green Hill Zone.
What do you think about the buildings, though? Like, why I've never seen buildings like that where they're like round on top, like the roofs are round. There's no roof on these things.
They look kind of like Tunisian houses or something, that you'd see in the Middle East or something.
That's what I'm saying. It's kind of like this weird look to the buildings.
Yeah, Alex Kidd in general, the aesthetics are almost kind of like tropical meets Middle Eastern meets like Japanese folklore. It's a very strange mix.
For sure, yeah.
Moving on to the prairie. This one's kind of funny because it has hedgehogs.
That's what I was going to say right now. Is this like a callback to Sonic?
A call forward. This is Sonic's brother.
Right there, just chilling in the bush?
Yeah. And I think the bird's kind of cool. I like that he has this like little red streak of like color on his eye. And there's a second image here where you actually can go underground and there's bones.
Yeah.
So honestly, I think the stages, these are no like Sonic the Hedgehog in terms of, how detailed the sprite work is, but I think they're cute. I like the idea of there being like a distinct difference between the above ground and the underground with the bones.
But I mean, it does give you a big appreciation for what Sonic the Hedgehog like accomplished by this, with the sky, the parallax scrolling and all this things that like they unlock, because like right now we have this thing where every time, because we're having new consoles right now, right? And every time we have consoles, we always go the same, right? We're always like, why were we going to update? Can you imagine people on the Master System looking at these screenshots and going, that's not that much better, dude? And then like later on we get Sonic the Hedgehog and Streets of Rage, and it's like a massive difference, Like just looking at this, it reminds me of like it's basically a Master System with just a little nicer graphics.
Right, yeah, and, as we record this, it is Sonic's 29th birthday, and Al Nilsson on Twitter was saying how he was sharing some memories, and he was talking about just how amazed he was at seeing Sonic running through a very early, like a wireframe version of Green Hill Zone. So if you can imagine the guy who's really in charge of the Sega Genesis in America, having lived through these games, like he's looking at Sonic at this time just a few years later and going, oh my God, look at what this thing's capable of. People are going to freak out. And they did freak out. I freaked out. I talk about it a lot on the show. I distinctly remember seeing Sonic the Hedgehog 1 in 1991, and I didn't know at the time what parallax scrolling was, but I was like, the backgrounds are like moving separately. It looks so three-dimensional. And I would just run back and forth and look at how it would move like that. And the best thing I knew to compare it to was I was kind of an animation buff, and I remember like multiplane camera processes where they would have a camera from above shooting down through various planes of glass, which had different layers of the background. So it would do that exact same effect. It would move, and the backgrounds would do that. And I was like, oh my God, they can do this in video games. Like, this is like a cartoon come to life. So having said that, let's look at Splashy Sea.
I like how this is going to be a Sonic the Hedgehog episode now. Sorry, guys.
Well, it's so hard not to talk about other things when you talk about Alex Kidd, but that's kind of the fun thing about it. Yeah, Splashy Sea. You know, this is a very Alex Kidd in Miracle World look here, but like, look at that flat blue. You know,
that's the flattest blue I've ever seen in my life.
I mean, it works though because the characters really pop on it. It's very easy to see. If you remember, there was a guy recently who was blasting the Sonic games because he was like, I could not see where the character was. The sky was blue and the character was blue. Where is he? And I'm like, no one had that problem, dude, except for you. But he should have played some Alex Kidd because look at that.
Yeah, that pops right there.
Scorpion Desert, which
has mummies.
Yeah, so this one's cool. I really like desert stages, and I think this one looks not bad. Like, it's got some little depth with the shading on the sand dunes, and mummies are cool. It's got the palm trees.
You like the whole pyramid thing in the Middle East?
I love pyramid stages. I love pyramid stages, and I love snow stages.
Did you design Bubsy 2, where everything was just pyramids the whole game?
That would be great. I think my tier would be probably like Egypt pyramid stages, and then it would be haunted house, and then it would be snow. I think those are my top 3.
It's almost like some of these levels, like, okay, we're going to Egypt, right? You're rescuing your dad. Why are you in Egypt? I don't know. But like, I feel like they just added all these levels and then made a plot in the end and then shipped it out.
Right, and to talk about Sonic again, at least in Sonic 1, there was kind of a connective tissue. Yeah, because you would go from Green Hill to Marble, and you'd see a little bit of a connection. You'd go underwater, and there would be connections there. You really felt like you were kind of going on a little journey, and Sonic 2 and Sonic 3 really pushed that with the little connective cutscenes. Yeah. I think Alex Kidd in the Enchanted Castle really would have benefited from like a map screen, or some transitions here just to get you the feel that you're moving around. Quackshot had a map screen, so you could be like, oh, okay, I get why I'm going from the city to ancient Egypt. Speaking of which, there's actually...
Sorry, go on. You were talking about the ancient Egypt?
Well, yeah, so talking about connective things, there is a connection here. You go from the pyramid after you're in the Scorpion Desert, and what do you think he's doing here?
He's trying to hide from bad people. That's what it looks like. But he's smiling though. Look at him. He's like smiling while he's under that rock. It's gonna crush him, but he's smiling.
And it's kind of weird. Like it's the background almost feels like it's all in the background, even the ground itself. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it looks like he's just floating 3D. There.
There's like no 3D where it's like the back is further back. I don't know what's further back in the screenshot. It's just like a bunch of Egyptian drawings and bricks. Yeah.
We're going to get so many thumbs downs from Alex Kidd fans.
I hope not.
Me too. Let's check out Hi-Ho Forest.
This one, I guess the background still has that kind of like, oh, we just put a bunch of like, this is just a big tree in the back right here. And it's so weird, the texture. But besides that, this one looks a little easier to navigate because it's obvious what's forward, what's in the front, and what's in the back, and what you can't jump on. So at least it has that going for it. But yeah.
What I think is weird then when you get, and I swear I'm not wrong in this, but when you get to Tropics Town, it looks exactly like the first stage.
Stage 7, I mean, or the next one, right?
Yeah, Tropics Town.
They reused the same trees for sure.
They reused, I think, everything. I think it's the exact same stage.
They didn't even change the colors. Like, can you imagine if they just made this a night stage? Like, it would have gave it a totally different vibe. Or they just changed the colors to, like, brown. Like, oh, now it's autumn. Just change everything from green to, like, red and yellow. Instead, they just, like, didn't even change anything. They just reused everything.
For sure. And then when you check out the next one, Rock Mountain, which is called Rock Mountain 1.
Uh-oh.
I mean, I think this looks fine, but then we're going to just blast through this one here. Go to Rock Mountain 2. Uh-oh. This is a different stage entirely, but they look like they're from the same stage. Like it's all the same...
assets.
Assets, yeah.
Yeah.
Not
Sweatshop.
I mean, Now there is some connective tissue here when you go to the next one called To the Sky, because in Rock Mountain 2 you're going upwards and then you're in the sky.
That's cool.
And I like sky stages, actually. Like, as simple as they are, I think it's fun to fly around, and I like the little blimp enemy. And then after that, you get to Sky Castle. So you see there is a connection here. I think the game just kind of, like, fumbles during the first half. But what do you think about Sky Castle?
This one looks pretty cool. You could tell that some of the assets, like, are maybe recolored, I think. Like, the ice right here, it kind of looks like the same rocks as right here. The brown. Oh no, they're different actually. Mm-hmm. This looks like an all new kind of like stage. It looks pretty cool. I actually never beat this game, so maybe one day I'll sit down and beat them all and do a big write up on my opinion on the legacy of this franchise before the new game comes out. But yeah, I like the way this level looks. It looks all brand new compared to everything. I feel like that those few stages we talked about, the filler ones, were probably just that, filler stages, because they didn't have enough time to finish the game they wanted to finish, like it always is back in the olden days.
Yeah, and then as you can see here, he's walking now towards a little arch. So let's do this next video. This is spoiler alert. This is the end of the game. Uh-oh. So, and this is, I credit Nintendo Complete for uploading this last year. You ready?
Poor guy, dude. Give him a sub, dude. I'm going to sub him right here, right now. There you go. I subbed
Do it.
All right, I'm going to play it. 1, 2, 3.
All right, so as you can see here, he took out the last guy and he said, "You're mean. I want my mommy."
Perfect.
So watch this. Here's your big reveal. Alex, it's me, your father. How do you like Paper Rock?
Oh.
A nice place to visit, right? Ashra, be good from now on. So this is the big bad guy of the game. I've learned my lesson now.
This is evil.
And then he says, listen to this. Alex's father, Thor, hadn't been a prisoner at all. He had actually been using Ashra as a servant.
Wow.
Thor was really quite happy. Alex was astounded. So it's like his dad just played a trick, but was very glad to know that Thor was happy and gave his father a big hug. So, and when Alex told his family about Thor and how he was living, everyone was overjoyed. Thereafter, the people of the 2 planets, Ares and Paper Rock, were always friends. So it's like, it's a very kiddie story, isn't it? Like, I feel like I just made a story up in my head to tell a little child. Like, oh, but the daddy wasn't being bad, he was just playing a trick, and he was happy. Imagine,
that's child abuse, dude. You like made your child go, hey, I got kidnapped, dude. Everything's fucked, man. The whole world's fucked, bro. I got kidnapped. You have to travel across the world and kill many men to find me. Yeah. And then in the end, you're like, actually, it was all a trick.
Well, and the funny thing is Alex Kidd's like kind of like upset or astounded or whatever. And then he's like, but my dad's happy. It's like, your dad's happy? So you're happy that your dad wasn't kidnapped, but he tricked you. But because your dad's happy, you're happy. And everyone's friends. It's just such a...
Barry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
For some reason, it's all choppy. Let me turn it off. Actually, no, it's going good now. Say what you're saying again after me.
Well, I was just saying that it just kind of deflates the whole game, because it's just like, oh, you're happy, we're friends, the end. And
that's it.
And that's it. And it just seems really strange. I don't know. Kind of a letdown, especially when you're like, this is the big 16-bit game, and he's looking for his dad. And as you can see in that little video, like, he was technically battling the boss, but really you do a game of rock, paper, scissors, and then I think you kick the boss once, and that's it. It's not like you were really fighting him. Yeah. And I guess his big thing was he had a bunch of hands, so he could play rock, paper, scissors real fast or something like that. But, yeah, so that's that. I mean, I don't know. We could talk for hours about the plot, or we could move on to the next section. What do you think?
Let's move on to the next section.
All right. Yeah, so we've got here a Sega Genesis commercial. So let's watch that. You ready?
Yeah, I'll play it now.
What's the hottest 16-bit video game system with true arcade games? Great
So for those
real challenge, stereo sound,
listening,
and
it's a
the
kid
hottest
playing a
library
Genesis, and all these games are flashing by.
Golden
Space
Axe,
Harrier
Super
2,
Hang-On,
Altered
Forgotten
Beast,
World,
Golden Axe,
Stereo
Super
2,
Hang-On,
Great
Forgotten
Baseball,
Worlds,
Baseball, Truxton,
Revenge of
Arnold Palmer,
Shinobi,
Tournament
Tommy
Golf,
Lasorda
Super
Baseball,
Display,
Truxton, Last Battle, Arnold Palmer,
Fools and
Tournament Golf,
Defender, Rainbow
Zoom,
3,
Thunder Force 2, Ghost and
Too
Ghouls,
much.
Mystic Defender, Rambo
Genesis, new
3,
generation in video games.
Sega Genesis. Now, and this kid's just like losing it. So if you can see, Alex Kidd was not mentioned, and Alex Kidd was not shown off in these early Sega Genesis ads. Now, you might be saying, well, Barry, at the beginning of the show, you did say that you learned the game was not one of the launch titles. However, in May of 1989, there were reviews already going out in print media of Alex Kidd in the Enchanted Castle. And these reviews, while not explicit, were most likely taken from Japanese imports of the game because it came out in February. And I think what backs this up is they do talk about the Jenkin. What do they call rock, paper, scissors in the Japanese
Jenkin.
version?
Jenkin.
Yeah. So they do talk about Jenkin, and if you play the American version of the game, they don't call it that. They call it rock, paper, scissors. So despite this, Sega did clearly know that the game would be coming out either early 1990 or late 1989, and yet they still opted not to put it in their ads. So, I mean, well, I'll read this here. So, I wrote out that despite being an early example of platformers on the console, it seemed like Alex Kidd took a back seat to celebrity-fronted games like Joe Montana and Michael Jackson, as you saw with the Genesis Does ad campaign, arcade games like Altered Beast, and licensed platformers like Mickey Mouse. And you and I both know Al Nilsson had that famous Mickey Mouse video. That's like the first time we saw him, was where he was showing off Mickey Mouse, and he was like, look at this animation, look at that. And it wasn't there. Why do you think they just glossed over Alex Kidd? I mean, sure, it wasn't released yet, but the game was out in February, so they had the footage. They had review copies.
Because, like I said, it felt like a transitional game where its main point was to be a low-budget 16-bit title to get people that bought the Master System, which wasn't that many in America, to transition to the Sega Genesis in some areas. And I feel like you've seen Al Nilsson, he understands that in America, graphics and next generation, we're always chasing in America that that they'll sell. So he probably thought there's other games or celebrities, right? So that's his big push was look how good this game looks, or look who's on the game, Mickey Mouse / Michael Jackson or whoever it was at the time. So I could see that in his marketing perspective and the way his intentions to sell a console in America were, it makes 100% sense why he's like, this game is doesn't have the graphics, doesn't have the clout, and doesn't have a celebrity, right? So it's like kind of goes against his marketing. It's also not extreme either, so it kind of goes against the Sega Genesis branding at the time. Yeah,
absolutely. And I reached out to Al Nilsson, who, we're talking about him. He was the director of marketing at Sega of America from 1989 to 1993. We asked him to share his memories of the game when it released with the Genesis in August 1989, and he actually pushed back and claimed that the game was not a launch title. And I was like, wait, what? And so I thought I was done doing these notes, and I had to go back through, and I dug further. I reached out to a friend of the show, Ken Horowitz of Sega16.com, who we've actually had twice on our Swing and Report Show podcast. Like, I completely forgot we talked to him so much. And, Ken, always the helpful guy, he told us that Al had told him the following a few months ago. So this is a quote. This is what Al Nilsson said. He said, "For some reason, I don't remember Alex Kidd as a launch title. I always draw a blank on this title. Also, its stock number of 1005 puts it after Ghosts and Ghouls, which kind of implies that it was a later title. But I just don't know for sure, but my gut says no. Stock numbers were assigned by category of game, first two numbers, and then numerically by the order they became a planned part of the product line. Sometimes they match release, and sometimes they don't. The fun of developing and marketing software. But the initial titles were pretty accurate since they were the only titles we had. So with that in mind, 10 would be the category, and 05 would be Alex Kidd. And I'm assuming categories like action-adventure. So maybe 10, and then 05 would be the fifth game, which means you're already 5 deep, and the Genesis did not launch with that many games. You know, you look at those early ads, which we'll take a look at in a little bit, but like all they show is really like Space Harrier, Thunderblade, and Altered Beast. They don't show that much more than that. So with that in mind, I referred back to an article that I had planned to show in this episode backing up Alex Kidd as a launch title. Because, can you bring up the Sega's Genesis? Do you see that magazine?
The magazine one, the preview?
Yeah, like the 2 pages.
Yeah, I got it.
So if you can see it here, on the far right, it shows Alex Kidd games right there. So I was like, oh, it was a launch title. But in reading the article itself here, they do say that it's just releasing with a handful of strong titles, and they only list Space Harrier 2, Super Thunderblade. That's really it. And then they push Altered Beast. So despite being shown here on the side, like it's not clearly said that it was a launch title. It's just shown there. And worth noting too, Thunderblade did not release as a launch title. That released about 2 or 3 weeks later. So if we are just talking about games that came out August 14th, 1989, you know, the first day that the Genesis is in America, I don't think you could have bought Alex Kidd. In fact, as you'll see here, so reviews for the game, like I mentioned, they hit in May 1989, and GamePro and Video Games and Computer Entertainment Magazine had these. I think they were playing the Japanese version, which released February 89. And, well, I skimmed both of them, and they don't really mention anything like the characters losing their clothes, which would be a very clear sign that they were playing an import. They do mention Janken, and I don't think it's possible that they were playing were playing American review copies from Sega. I think they were just playing what they had on hand, and based on articles like this, they knew Alex Kidd would be releasing with the Genesis. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you want to bring up this next one, it's that multicolored ad. It has a choo-choo train and a little Cherry Mary Muffin doll.
It's up. I got it.
Yeah, so further digging showed no sign of Alex Kidd in early ads for the Genesis, only listing, and I'll list them off here, Altered Beast, Soccer, Last Battle, Super Thunderblade, Tommy Lasorda Baseball, Thunder Force 2, and Ghouls and Ghosts. And not to say that those are launch titles, but those all released within the launch window because this ad is from October 1989. Additionally, there is a Sears 1989 Christmas catalog, which I actually own.
Wow.
And I got this from a store in my neighborhood that sells like nostalgia stuff. And I was like, oh, I will buy all of these old catalogs because you can see here, it's got the Sega Genesis advertisement here with the games. Yeah. So, they're selling the Genesis for $189.95. And then the games they advertise here are Super Thunderblade, Space Harrier 2, Tommy Lasorda Baseball, Super Hang-On, Thunder Force 2, World Soccer, Ghouls and Ghosts, Last Battle. That's it.
Which one you need to buy, though? Last Battle. Remember that one?
Probably Last
Black
Battle.
Belt 2.
Yeah, right? But yeah, I mean, you can see right there, like, there's no sign of Alex Kidd anywhere. And this is the Christmas catalog. This is December now, so that pushes us up to December 1989. I will bet that Alex Kidd did not even release in 1989, despite the back of the game saying 1989 copyright. I would almost guess it was a winter or even spring 1990 release. And the only thing I really had backing that up was that there was a video on YouTube showing someone walking through a Toys R Us in 1990, and you can see Alex Kidd there. The game's priced, like I said, at $39.99, which is a little lower, but I think it might have launched at that price because sometimes they'll go like knock $5 off to look more appealing. Yeah, so there you have it. Alex Kidd was not a launch title, and I don't even think it released in 1989.
So
which just
if you have any of your YouTubers that you follow and they're making videos of them crying, talking about how Alex Kidd is one of their launch title games on the Sega Genesis, they're lying to you. Right?
Well, it just but it just goes to show that you can't rely on Wikipedia. You can't rely on Google searching Sega Genesis launch games, because time and time again you'll get lists showing Alex Kidd in the Enchanted Castle, and it's not a launch game. It's not even a launch window game, I would argue. Like, if you're releasing early 1990 and the system came out in August 1989, that's really far removed. And yet we still bundle in, like, some people might claim Super Thunderblade was, even though it released in September. So that's the news, George. Alex Kidd, not a launch title. Anyway, despite releasing within the launch window, which is likely within 6 months of the console's release, Alex did not see much, if any, marketing. And do you think Sega was wise just to not waste their time on Alex Kidd?
I think so. I mean, they had.
How dare you?
I think there's aspects of him that could have been saved if they kind of gave him more time and went in and like rethought, like, oh, instead of it being rock paper scissors, maybe he'll have 3 attacks and we'll just call him rock paper scissors, and integrate it with the platforming, right?
Right.
Or but like just continuing this whole thing where you have to do rock paper scissors and give it up to chance. It's kind of hard for me to think of kids back then not being upset that they mastered a game and they lost by chance. Like, there's no actual strategy. It's kind of hard, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
So,
and
what are your opinion on that?
I mean, I think by the time it was coming out, Mickey Mouse was already the big platformer. I think Sonic the Hedgehog was maybe not in development, because that is kind of early, but Sega of America were starting to think we should start trying to find a new platforming game that'll really wow people. So I just think by...
I was going to say, I wouldn't even be shocked that if we, like, dig deep into the history of the Illusion game, that, like, maybe there was even a plan to, like, make it a Alex Kidd game where he just, like, in this random castle world. Like, at the end of the day, I feel like Mickey Mouse and having the Castle of Illusions game kind of put Alex Kidd to the side faster than... I mean, of course, Sonic the Hedgehog was the nail in the coffin for, right. I think Mickey Mouse not being the leading game on the platform, but, like, I think Sega was obviously smart to make their own IP and their own character instead of relying on Mickey, but I do feel like Mickey probably took his spot, Alex Kidd's spot. He's more popular. He's a slower platforming game, highly animated compared to this. So I don't know. I just feel like the evolution of him would probably be, I don't know, like, what would you rather play as a kid? Alex Kidd, a thing you never heard about in the 90s, or a Mickey Mouse game? Like, when I was a kid, I used to, like, rent a really bad Mickey Mouse game on the NES. It wasn't that bad, but I used to rent it over and over again because it just had Mickey Mouse on it. Like, that's it. Like, when I was a kid, that's all I cared about. It didn't have to... Like, I'd never heard of Alex Kidd, so...
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that goes hand in hand with their relying on celebrities and games that really wow graphically. And I think Alex Kidd just didn't have either one of those. I mean, even Space Harrier 2, despite kind of being a janky sequel, is cool looking. Like, that's a good way to showcase your game. let's talk about the game's development. I know we're an hour in here, but this is going to take a really long time. No, I'm just kidding. Surprisingly, very little is written about Enchanted Castle's development. The game lacks a staff role, and the staff have only been revealed in various interviews. So we have Kotaro Hayashida, role unknown. We have Reiko Kodama, we know very well, and maybe the designer of the game. It's unknown again. We have a person named Tarnya, whose actual name is Chikado Kamatani, who later moved on to Artoon and worked on Pinobi. Okay. And then, remember that? And then we have Izuho Numata, who's the voice of Alex Kidd. And
is this person still alive?
Is who?
Is this Numata still alive?
Last I see, they worked on a game in 2013, so maybe. They look like they worked on worked on sound for a lot of games under the name Ippo. They worked on Phantasy Star 3. They worked on Land of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse. Alex Kidd in Enchanted Castle. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is a sound assistant. So, all these people had long careers, but none of them are talking about Alex Kidd.
No.
So that's that. But, it goes to show that, it was a real sweatshop mentality with with that development team. So it makes sense that there wouldn't be much to say. I mean, I think we were even kind of scratching our heads and trying to figure out what was going on with Miracle World. When that came out, we had a bit to say, but nothing groundbreaking. At the time, reviews were average. The game was rated in the mid-60s out of 100, while Japan's Beep Mega Drive magazine gave the game a low 40. Ouch.
Wow. They hated it.
Let's talk about the cover art for the game. We can talk about that. So if you want to bring up the Japanese one first.
Oh, no. Okay, here we go.
Yeah. So as you can see here, it's very clip arty. Alex Kidd's jumping, kicking rocks. It's a very this is an aesthetic in Japan. I never really got this one. Yeah. It's like a dirty, sketchy, uneven lines.
It kind of reminds me of those random mangas that you find where it's really aimed at little kids, where it's this really specific art style. I think it's kind of cute in a way. And I really like the little side on the spine, the Mega Drive. It has him.
I love that.
Little peace sign. Yeah, I like that. Outside of that, I mean, it's an okay cover. Maybe add some. I don't know. It looks good. I mean, it really does capture the game though, because it has the ice here, the rocks, the pyramids that are obviously 2 stages, the mummies,
and then the sky castles up there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you're right. It does remind me of kids focused art in Japan. That is cute, and I love the spine. I love his little eat. Let's look at the American one. Oh boy,
looks beautiful too. It looks like a dude. It looks like your next Barry.
It's me.
If I drew, I was gonna say if I drew you as a cartoon, I draw you as that. I mean. It's basically a white dude, right? That looks like he just came from a golf trip, and he's like, "What's up, guys? This is my game." Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I'm trying to do it. He's got the castle in the background. I mean, all the stages are there. They got some of the enemies. The 6-armed guy.
They try to make him look more like a American cartoon look, I guess, like Popeye or something, kind of a weird look.
Yeah, I mean. I think the stuff around him looks nice, but I think Alex Kidd himself it doesn't look like Alex Kidd at all. It just looks like some dorpy dude. The shirt doesn't even match. It's like a yellow adventure shirt. But that's where I kind of got that Indiana Jones vibe from him, and with the pyramids up there.
And
on the back too, it's worth pointing out that it looks like someone took a photo of the game, from a TV screen.
Ad Nielsen did that. He was on his camera.
Oh, you think so?
And then he taped it on the back.
Yeah.
And then he
most likely. Pettycopter's on the back here. Yeah. Ashra.
And look, it has the address of SEGA of America.
Should we visit them?
It doesn't work anymore, but we could go to the building and
squat. South San
What's
Francisco.
squatting?
I've never heard it called that. Is it called that? South San Francisco.
No idea. Then they just call it like the trashy side of San Francisco now. I
Isn't
don't
that
know
that song? If you're going to South San Francisco. So there you have it. The game itself has been released to several Genesis compilations, including Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection, Sega Genesis Classics Collections, the Wii Virtual Console, and the Genesis Mini. However, the game did not see release on the Japanese Mega Drive Mini. But
Good.
if you but if you change the Genesis Mini region to Japan, it will show the Japanese version of the game, which is really cool. So, what is your suggested way to play the game to listeners and viewers, and what do you think the best release is?
None. No.
Come on.
I would say any of the emulated ones are just fine. Like I don't think any of these are like bad collections.
Yeah.
Like the Ultimate Genesis Collection, Genesis Classics, they're fine. The Wii Virtual Console, which you can't get anymore, so I can't say that. I want to say the Sega Genesis Mini, but then again, like you said, it has to be the Japanese version of the game. So
No, it doesn't.
I would say,
No.
Oh, it doesn't? Okay, then. The Mini, so that way everybody could go buy it and support Sega, and you could have a miniature Sega Genesis and impress all your friends. When they come.
Right. I think the Genesis Mini is the best one because there's a lot of early Mega Drive games on there, and the fact that if you switch the region, it does have the Japanese version means you get to check out the nudity mode and see Alex Kidd's little elephant trunk. I mean,
That's what
I
you're
don't think
into.
any of these versions are bad, but to be honest, I think either the original on the cartridge or the Genesis Mini one is the best way to go. So Alex Kidd in Shinobi World would end the series for decades, and Enchanted Castle is seen by many as the last game in the franchise. From there, Alex made cameos in Sega Gaga and the Superstars and All-Stars series, and we go into this more in Sega Talk number 30.
Yes.
And you can also hear more about Alex Kidd in our Superstars Tennis episode, which is number 37. Alex Kidd has since been confirmed to return, as we mentioned, in 2021 in Alex Kidd in Miracle World DX by Merge Games, Jenkin Team, and Sega. So,
Damn.
George, to wrap things up, because I don't think we'll talk about Alex Kidd for a while, but I think we will return either to discuss his other games as one episode or maybe Shinobi World. I feel like that would be a really fun one to talk about. Do you think Alex Kidd left the legacy it deserved, or do you think the series deserved more or less?
That's kind of a hard question because like me and you didn't grow up during the time with Sega when they were on the Master System. We didn't know what it was like to like go in the playground and start and be like, yeah, I own a Master System, and everybody, like 90% of people own an NES.
Right.
So I don't want to say if he deserves what, the legacy he left behind. I will say that I think that it's a character that just needed to be ironed out more, and just happened that more popular IPs took its place. I do think that my favorite depiction of Alex Kidd is the one I posted on Twitter a while back, where it was the one on the Worlds Collide with the Sonic Archie comic.
Yeah.
I think they did a good job of like giving him this personality of he's like, we got to play rock, paper, scissors, and it's like always in agreement, and it's always like he's always out for adventure, kind of like a Sonic thing, but giving it his own little twist, that he's always up for games, he's always up for anything, right?
Yeah.
And so I like that way, aspect of him. I think this kind of like old Japanese was not as good. I think they need, if they do DX, I hope they think about that comic, right? The DX team that's doing it right now, and kind of give it that personality in like a 16-bit or whatever it is now, right? Like the hand drawing graphics. That'd be cool if they kind of capture that personality.
I agree with you. Yeah, I think DX will really be a make or break point for the series. I mean, obviously, if the game does well, Alex Kidd's back. If it doesn't, people are going to be like, yeah, it's probably best that we forget about this game. And I think Alex Kidd left the legacy it left I don't really know if it deserved more or less. I will say, though, that I feel like there's a lot of people out there who hype the game up a lot more than what it actually is. And also I feel like there's a lot of people out there who are like, you know, you'll see on Twitter or stuff, they'll go, Sega, give us another Alex Kidd, give it. And it's like, I want to ask these people, like, have you played the games? Because they're average. I mean, they're fine, but I don't think they are deserving of Sega taking the time to revive them, which is why I think it was a smart bet to license it out and work with a team who is passionate about the series and is already putting the work in. So I think that's great that it's happening. I just think, I mean, I hope people enjoy it.
We deal with Sega fans a lot on Twitter, and are you surprised at some of these accounts that pop up where, like, it's a Twitter account that, like, it's always used and always retweeting, and it's literally all based around, like, Alex Kidd. We have a few of these people that, like, retweet us and, like, comment on some of our stuff, and it's like profile all Alex Kidd, and he's only talking about Alex Kidd. It's like, I don't understand. Like, there's, like, this cult fan base for this character that, like, isn't anywhere near mainstream, obviously, but
right. I mean, I would say I don't understand where anyone finds the time to do that for anything. It just seems strange to me to, like, put so much effort. But Shenmue fans do this all the time. I'll see this guy and he's like, I'm aspiring to be an actor and I will only post about Shenmue on Twitter. And I'm like, where are you finding time to do this? Like, is there more that defines you than that? I don't know. But I mean, I guess that's what a dedicated, obsessed fan does, is they, like, do stuff that people would go, really? You're doing that? Okay, all right.
I will say that at least for Shenmue, the at the time the advertisement for that was, like, insane. At least.
Oh,
like,
no, but I
think
think
Alex Kidd had that insane push ever.
Right. I think Shenmue was a series that kind of cultivated that fan mentality and I think earned it, even though I think some of the fans are, you know, over the top, but that's what some fans are. I think with Alex Kidd, though, it's just, I have to ask them, like, did you really play all these games and think they were, like, awesome and, like, top tier Sega? I mean, if you did, then more power to you, but let's be honest here, guys. But, you know, I like Alex Kidd, nothing against him. I'm glad he's coming back, and I'm interested to see what the franchise brings. And, you know, talking about Alex Kidd for over an hour here, I really want to go back now and check out all those games that I skimmed over when I was going through ROM collections. So let's round things off. Let's finish things off with memories from our Patreon members. So if you support us at any level on Patreon, you get to share your memories of the game, and it will be read at the end of the episode. So here we go. We have two mainstays. We have Daniel Andres. He says, I remember when I first got this game for my Sega Genesis, either in 2012 or 2013. It was my first Alex Kidd game, and I thought it was all right. I didn't really like the box art that much, but the game itself was tons of fun and was also filled with lots of charm. I do get a good smile out of the Jenkin minigames whenever they popped up. I haven't touched it since and no longer own that copy, but I do still have it on multiple collections that I own. Nicholas Schaefer says... What?
He's going to hate this episode because we made fun of the Jenkin.
What? Oh, okay. Nicholas Schaefer says, so I'm a big Sonic and Sega fan and always will read about this mythical mascot before Sonic. And when they came out on Wii, I got all his games. This one was definitely my favorite because it's 16-bit, but I will say I'm glad Sega went with Sonic. Still, Alex Kidd for Smash and pumped for his upcoming game. I think I missed a word there, but Alex Kidd for Smash. He wants him in Smash Brothers.
Of course. Why wouldn't you want him?
I don't speak your language, kids. I'm sorry. When you say for Smash, I think you're talking like the Hulk or something. You know what I mean?
Or, yeah, of course.
But I'm pumped for his upcoming game, too. So until we play that and until we talk about Alex Kidd again, you can join us on the next episode where we'll cover...
I can't wait.
Yeah. It's my favorite game.
Yes.
So from myself and George, thank you for listening. And George, say the last word.
I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
That was more than one word.
That was more than one word, yeah. All right.